Most people would rather lose 30% in a crash than look foolish holding cash for 3 quiet years. That sentence sounds absurd until you watch how people actually behave. They will quote you spreadsheets. They will worship compounding. They will tell you every idle dollar is lazy. They will repeat that cash is trash while they lock every spare dollar into markets, mortgage payments, retirement accounts, private deals, and lifestyles that demand the next paycheck. Then the storm arrives, and the same people who bragged about being fully invested discover they were never rich. They were just fully exposed. I have spent my life around capital, and I will tell you something most people do not want to hear. Cash is not a low IQ asset. Cash is a war chest. Cash is not what you hold when you are afraid to act. Cash is what allows you to act when everyone else is trapped. That difference is the difference between being technically wealthy on paper and being dangerous in the real world. You do not build a life with only returns. You build a life with options. That is where ordinary advice begins to fail you. It optimizes a spreadsheet and ignores a human nervous system. It optimizes annualized return and ignores what happens when your employer becomes intolerable. Your business partner turns predatory, your child gets sick, your industry freezes, your lender tightens, or a once-in-a-decade bargain appears while your money is scattered across assets you cannot touch without pain. A portfolio can look perfect and still leave you powerless. I want you to understand the hidden hierarchy of wealth. At the bottom is income. Above that is net worth. Above that is liquidity. Above that is control. Above that is refusal power. Most people spend their whole lives trying to climb from income to net worth and never notice that the real jump, the one that changes how you speak, negotiate, sleep, and invest, is the jump from paper wealth to liquid power. You can have a 7-figure balance sheet and still be weak. You can have far less than that and still be strong if your war chest is real. When I buy businesses, I do not just ask whether they can earn. I ask whether they can survive stress without begging for rescue. I think the same way about a household if your whole financial life requires smooth markets, stable employment, cheap credit, and no surprises. You do not have a system. You have a fair weather costume. The market has a cruel sense of timing. It does not wait until your life is convenient. It does not ask whether this is a good month for a drawdown. It does not check whether your roof needs replacing, whether your parent needs care, whether your company is laying people off, or whether your marriage is under strain. It simply moves. If all your money is committed when life hits you at the wrong moment, the market stops being an investment machine and becomes an extraction machine. That is when smart people do stupid things. They sell quality assets at ugly prices because they need cash now. They take terrible jobs because they need income now. They accept insulting terms because they need certainty now. They tell themselves a bad deal is temporary because they cannot afford to say no. Now, that is not investing. That is desperation wearing business clothes. The industry does not like this conversation because cash under your control earns them nothing. $1 in your brokerage account, your fund, your managed model, your private allocation, your structured product, your advisory sleeve, your mortgage prepayment, your illiquid syndication, that dollar feeds somebody else's machine. $1 sitting quietly in your own reserve feeds your judgment. One system monetizes your obedience. The other builds your freedom. So let me say it plainly. If you do not have a war chest, you do not yet have financial power. You have exposure with branding. Now I want to show you why this matters in the exact moments that shape fortunes. In every crisis, there are 2 markets, the public market that everyone watches and the private panic market that only liquid people can enter. The first market gives you headlines. The second market gives you deals. The public market is where anchors speak in urgent voices, where portfolios flash red, where people chant about buying the dip but secretly feel nausea. The private panic market is where landlords miss refinancing windows, business owners face payroll pressure, partners need out, families sell property below value to solve immediate problems, and great assets change hands at humiliating prices because someone somewhere does not have cash. That market is not imaginary. It showed up in 2008. It showed up in 2020. It will show up again because human beings will always lever too much, promise too much, spend too much, and assume tomorrow will be smoother than it is. Crisis does not create bargains from nowhere. Crisis reveals who was overextended. Your war chest is what lets you purchase what their overconfidence put on sale. Most people know this intellectually and still miss it financially. Why? Because they keep treating cash like a dead asset instead of an active weapon. A war chest does 3 things at once. First, it protects you from forced selling. Second, it gives you refusal power in bad situations. Third, it lets you deploy into chaos when prices break and other people cannot move. Notice what is hiding inside that sequence. Defense, dignity, offense, safety, leverage, attack. Most people think cash is only the first one. That is why they never keep enough of it. They reduce cash to an emergency fund and miss the whole mechanism. 3 to 6 months of expenses can keep you from a credit card spiral. Good, that is a safety net. I am talking about something more serious. I am talking about a reserve large enough to change your behavior, not just your survival odds. If your reserve cannot let you leave a bad job, reject a predatory client, wait out a recession, or buy a genuinely mispriced asset, then you do not have a war chest. You have a bandage. The first hidden mechanism is this. Liquidity changes your psychology before it changes your balance sheet. The man with no cash sounds agreeable because he has to. The man with reserves sounds calm because he can afford to. One is performing confidence, the other has terms. You can hear the difference in one sentence. When someone offers you a weak salary, a one-sided contract, a rushed investment, a desperate merger, an overpriced house, or a flashy car note, your answer is only as strong as your reserves. People say negotiation is a communication skill. That is only half true. Negotiation is a liquidity skill. The strongest sentence in business is not a clever sentence. It is no cash makes no real. That is why I call it refusal power. If you had 2 full years of living expenses in cash tomorrow morning, think about what would change by tomorrow afternoon. You would speak differently to your boss. You would evaluate clients differently. You would feel less pressure to accept every invitation, every overtime burden, every fake promotion, every underpriced consulting job, every forced relocation, every low-integrity partnership. You would stop confusing motion with opportunity. You would also stop worshiping salary the way frightened people. Worship salary. Salary feels safe only when you have no reserve. Once you have a war chest, you see salary for what it is. It is a useful fuel line, not a god. It pays bills. It funds ownership. It should not own your nervous system. A person earning half as much as you with a thick cash reserve can have more real freedom than you with a magnificent paycheck and no runway. That is hard for status-driven people to accept because it exposes the fraud inside their lifestyle. They look rich and live trapped. They have the house, the car, the memberships, the subscriptions, the school district, the kitchen renovation, the annual vacation, the visible success. They also have no capacity to stop. That is not wealth. That is a decorated dependency. The market punishes decorated dependency. Now let us talk about the argument people always use against holding serious cash inflation. They say if you keep $100,000 in cash while inflation runs at 3%, you lose roughly $3,000 of purchasing power per year. That sounds intelligent, and in isolation, it is true. But intelligent-sounding arithmetic can still be strategically stupid because it ignores the cost on the other side. You do not compare cash to a fantasy world where all investments rise smoothly, and you never need liquidity. You compare cash to the real world where markets fall, emergencies cluster. Job losses arrive in recessions, lenders retreat when you need them most, and great opportunities appear at the exact moment your existing assets are least comfortable to sell. Opportunity cost works both ways. Everyone calculates the visible cost of idle cash. Very few calculate the invisible cost of illiquidity. Suppose you keep $100,000 liquid and lose $3,000 a year to inflation. Over a decade, that lost purchasing power is painful. I will not pretend otherwise. But now compare it to the cost of being fully invested into the wrong sequence of events. A market drops 30%. At the same time, you need $30,000 for a genuine emergency. If you sell into that decline, you do not merely lose the mark to market drawdown. You also lose the recovery on the shares you sold. The pain compounds because the assets you sacrifice are usually the exact assets that later rebound. Your spreadsheet records one transaction. Your life experience is a double loss. First, you sell low because you must. Second, you miss the bounce because you no longer own what you sold. The arithmetic people use against cash is too shallow. They count the drip of inflation and ignore the fracture of forced liquidation. Now add the second side of the ledger, opportunity. What if keeping cash allows you to buy a quality asset at a 40 or 50% discount during a crash? What if that purchase later doubles or triples because the seller's panic had nothing to do with the underlying quality? What if your reserve lets you buy stocks when everyone else is begging for the market to stop falling? What if it lets you fund a business acquisition, a property down payment, or a private deal at the exact moment that capital becomes scarce and terms swing in your favor. The missed return on idle cash looks expensive only until a real bargain appears. Then liquidity stops looking lazy and starts looking lethal. You must learn to distinguish between linear math and asymmetrical math. Linear math says cash loses a little each year. Asymmetrical math says one well-timed deployment can erase years of that drag and still leave you with the most valuable profit of all, which is that you were never cornered along the way. That is the part people never price. Peace, patience, clarity, sleep, self-respect, those are not soft benefits. They are economic advantages. A frightened mind overpays, panics, chases, freezes, and obeys. A liquid mind can wait. Patience is not a personality trait. It is often a reserve ratio. People tell me they want to become better investors. Usually what they mean is that they want better predictions. I think that is backward. Prediction helps. Liquidity helps more. The investor with a thin war chest must react to markets. The investor with a large war chest can let markets react to him. That is a different game. At Berkshire, I have kept enormous cash positions, and every time the crowd mocked the drag, I heard the same mistake. They thought I was comparing cash to bull market returns. I was comparing cash to future dislocations. They were scoring today. I was positioning for the auction that appears when the room catches fire. This is what you need to understand about crises. They reward preparation long before they reward courage. People imagine that winners in crashes are simply bolder. Usually they were just liquid sooner. Courage without reserves is theater. Reserves convert courage into execution. Let me make it concrete in a way people can feel. Imagine one person keeps $200,000 in cash for years. Friends lecture him. Advisors frown. Online experts tell him he is falling behind. In the short run, they are right on paper. Markets rise. Charts look cruel. His reserve seems heavy and unproductive. Then a sharp downturn hits. Stocks fall hard. Credit tightens. A commercial property owner needs out fast. A small but durable business misses forecasts and its lender gets nervous. Public markets are down enough that sellers start accepting reality. Our quiet cash holder is not euphoric. He is not trying to be a hero. He is simply operational. He can act. He buys good assets from forced sellers because he did the hard part years earlier. He carried liquidity through the boredom so he could use it in the panic. 5 years later, everyone remembers his gains. Almost nobody remembers. The more important fact, he never had to feel trapped during the storm. He was calm when others were bargaining with their bills. That is wealth. Now compare him with the person who was technically more efficient, fully invested, minimal cash, excellent discipline according to conventional wisdom. Then the drawdown comes, the job becomes unstable, the emergency appears, and the portfolio drops at exactly the wrong moment. Suddenly the person with the cleaner spreadsheet becomes the weaker decision maker. He is not choosing among opportunities. He is triaging pain. This is why I keep repeating that paper, wealth, and power are not the same thing. Power is the ability to wait. Power is the ability to refuse. Power is the ability to buy when others must sell. Power is the ability to keep your standards when the world gets noisy. Cash does all four. Let us go deeper into the psychological damage of living without it. Most people think financial stress comes from low income. Sometimes it does. But I have met people making small fortunes who lived with more fear than school teachers. Why? Because every dollar was already spoken for. Every month their life reopened negotiations they could not afford to lose. They had no slack. No margin, no runway, no war chest. Their entire identity depended on continuous inflow. That is what golden handcuffs really are. They are not high income. They are high fixed obligations with no reserve. If you earn a large income and keep no serious cash, your life becomes a performance you cannot cancel. You drive to preserve the image. You say yes to preserve the overhead, you overwork to preserve the salary, you compromise to preserve the machine. Soon you are no longer allocating capital. You are feeding a structure that threatens you every month. A war chest breaks that spell. It tells your brain the truth. You can survive, you can wait, you can leave, you can think. And once your brain stops living in quiet emergency mode, your judgment improves across the board. You do not just make better emergency decisions, you make better ordinary decisions. You stop chasing yield because you are no longer hungry for salvation. You stop forcing investments because you are no longer afraid of emptiness. You stop confusing activity with progress. Your standards rise because urgency falls. That is a massive edge. One of the most destructive beliefs in modern finance is that every dollar must always be optimized. Every dollar has a job, and not every job is maximum return. Some dollars are there to compound, Some dollars are there to defend. Some dollars are there to give you bargaining power. Some dollars are there to let you pounce. Confusing these functions is how people create elegant plans that fail under human conditions. You should not ask one question about cash. You should ask three. How much cash protects my downside? How much cash changes my behavior? How much cash prepares me for asymmetric opportunity? Those are different numbers. Your emergency reserve covers fragility. Your refusal reserve covers dignity. Your opportunity reserve covers offense. Now we are getting somewhere. The conventional advice of 3 to 6 months of expenses belongs to the first category, necessary, but basic. If your monthly life costs $4,000, 1 year of expenses is $48,000, 2 years is $96,000. That does not make you rich, but it changes the emotional geometry of your life. Add a separate opportunity reserve on top of that, one size to the kinds of moves you want to make. Maybe it is enough for a real estate down payment. Maybe it is startup runway. Maybe it is market crash capital. Maybe it is acquisition cash for a small business. Suddenly, cash is no longer a vague virtue. It becomes a strategic architecture. I would rather see you own fewer assets with a real war chest than own a larger pile of assets while one surprise can force you into stupidity. That statement irritates performance addicts because they are trained to see every uninvested dollar as failure. They still think the game is maximizing the visible number. The real game is maximizing favorable choices over a long life. If you can preserve favorable choices, compounding has time to work. If you lose favorable choices, compounding gets interrupted by fear. Fear is the most expensive tax in finance, not statutory tax, behavioral tax. The man with insufficient cash pays it every time he sells from anxiety, accepts weak terms, delays a necessary move, stays in a corrosive environment, or misses a once. In A-Date bargain because he was too efficient on paper to be effective in reality, I want you to think about your reserve not as dead money but as stored decision quality. Every extra month of expenses in that reserve buys you decision quality. Every extra layer of liquidity buys you patience. Every extra increment of patience increases the odds that you will deploy capital under favorable conditions instead of emotional ones. That is why cash can improve the returns of your other assets without directly earning much itself. It protects your stocks from your panic. It protects your property from your impatience. It protects your business from your neediness. It protects your relationships from financial fear. It protects your standards from low moments. People laugh at cash in calm periods because the benefits do not show up on a monthly statement. You cannot chart self-respect. You cannot backtest sleep. You cannot annualize the value of walking away from a bad boss or waiting 6 extra months for a better deal. Yet those invisible advantages often dwarf the visible drag. Think about the difference between being rich on your phone and powerful in your life. The person rich on the phone opens an app and sees a number. The person powerful in life can reject pressure. The person rich on the phone feels good when markets rise. The person powerful in life gets stronger when markets break. The person rich on the phone wants validation. The person powerful in life wants optionality. That is why so many people with respectable net worth still live with the emotional posture of scarcity. They built market exposure, not a war chest. There is also a moral dimension to this that people rarely discuss honestly. Having cash lets you help. You can assist family without borrowing. You can back a friend at the right moment. You can take pressure off a spouse. You can cover a medical event without turning your life upside down. You can absorb a business mistake without becoming a beggar. Liquidity does not just increase your upside, it reduces the collateral damage your life can inflict on the people around you. That matters. Wealth should make you calmer, not louder. A war chest does that because it gives you the one thing leverage cannot give you, which is quiet authority. Now, I am not telling you to sit in cash forever, hide from ownership, or worship caution. I am Warren Buffett. I believe in owning productive assets. I believe in businesses, equities, and long-term compounding. I do not believe in paralysis, but I also do not believe in the childish idea that fully invested is automatically sophisticated. Sometimes fully invested simply means strategically naked. The point is balance, but not the diluted kind of balance people use as an excuse for mediocrity. I mean functional balance, a real system. Own productive assets. Keep enough cash to sleep. Keep enough more cash to say no. Keep enough beyond that to say yes. When panic creates terms in your favor, that is a very different framework from the one most people inherit. Most people inherit this script: earn income, pay bills, max the retirement account, invest the rest. Keep a tiny emergency fund. Hope nothing clusters. Hope no big opportunity arrives while you are illiquid. Hope your employer stays decent. Hope markets cooperate if you need cash. Hope timing is kind. Hope is not a system. A war chest is a system, and systems matter most when sequence matters. Life is sequence risk with emotions attached. The wrong expense at the wrong time, the wrong job loss in the wrong market, the wrong medical issue in the wrong year, the wrong margin call in the wrong quarter, the wrong refinancing window in the wrong rate environment, and suddenly 10 years of clean arithmetic blows up. Cash does not eliminate sequence risk. It gives you room to survive it and exploit it. That is a profound difference. You should also understand the social pressure around this issue because it is not trivial. Holding serious cash requires tolerating mockery from people who worship optimization but have never tested their own resilience. They will tell you what your reserve could have earned. They almost never tell you what it could save you from. They will model the drag. They will not model the freedom. They will praise aggressiveness in up markets. They will disappear when your aggressive positioning meets an inconvenient life event. Do not let spectators allocate your risk. Most advice is shaped by people who earn from movement. Move your money, deploy your money, refinance your money, leverage your money, maximize your money. Very little advice is shaped by the question I care about, which is how strong are you when conditions stop being friendly. That is why the wealthy people with real staying power often look more conservative than spectators expect. They understand that permanence matters more than appearances. They keep reserves because they have lived long enough to know that a great asset bought at the right moment can outweigh years of tiny optimization, and a forced sale at the wrong moment can erase years of discipline. Now, let me give you the system shift I want for you. Stop treating cash as the opposite of investing. Treat cash as part of your capital allocation stack. Your growth capital belongs in productive assets. Your defense capital belongs in reserves. Your dignity capital belongs in enough liquidity to walk away. Your strike capital belongs in an opportunity fund size for the moves you actually want to make. Once you see those as separate functions, the whole conversation changes. You stop asking whether cash beats stocks in an abstract debate and start asking whether your current system gives you enough defense, enough dignity, and enough strike capacity. That is an adult question. You may discover that you are underarmed good. Better to discover it now than in the middle of the next break. Here is another truth most people avoid. The best opportunities rarely announce themselves politely. They arrive dressed as panic, embarrassment, inconvenience, or complexity. A distressed seller does not care that your money is trapped in a retirement account. A market crash does not delay itself until your bonus arrives. A good business available at a fair price can become a great business available at a ridiculous price for only a few weeks, sometimes a few days. The world does not schedule bargains around your liquidity, so you either prepare in advance or you watch others buy your future. That is the role of the war chest. It lets you convert other people's urgency into your advantage. It lets you remain rational while others become reactive. It lets you separate price from value because you are not under the gun. It lets you wait when waiting is intelligent and move fast when speed is required. That combination is incredibly rare because most people have one without the other. They are patient until they are pressured. Then they fold, or they are eager to act. But only with borrowed conviction. Cash is what makes patience and decisiveness coexist. That is power. If you are listening closely, you will notice that I am not really talking about cash anymore. I am talking about sovereignty, who controls your next move, who controls your time, who controls your standards, who controls whether you can endure a bad season, who controls whether you can capitalize on a broken market. If the answer is not you, then your net worth may be flattering you. The ultimate test of a financial system is not whether it looks efficient in a calm year. It is whether it leaves you stronger, calmer, and more dangerous in a hard year. A war chest passes that test. Now ask yourself the uncomfortable question. If your income stopped tomorrow, how quickly would your standards collapse? If a great opportunity appeared next month, could you act without tearing apart something else? If the market dropped 30 or 40%, would you become a buyer or a hostage? If your employer crossed the line, could you leave? If your spouse needed relief, could you provide it without borrowing time from your future? If a family emergency arrived in the same quarter as a recession, would your portfolio remain untouched? Your answers will tell you more about your real financial position than any net worth tracker ever will. I want you to stop admiring thin efficiency and start building thick resilience. Build ownership. Yes, build compounding, yes, but also build a war chest so substantial That panic belongs to other people. That is the hidden architecture of real wealth. Not just returns, not just net worth, not just credit, not just appearances, reserves, refusal power, strike power. That is how you stop being merely invested and start being formidable. The next downturn will come, the next freeze will come, the next auction room will open, the next cluster of emergencies will hit people who assumed smooth skies. The question is not whether that moment will arrive. It always does. The question is whether you will enter that moment as prey, as a spectator, or as a buyer. You do not need to predict the date. You need to decide what role you will have when the room gets loud. That choice starts long before the headlines. It starts the next time cash in your account makes you feel guilty. Do not rush to silence that guilt. Interrogate it. Ask whether it came from logic or from a culture that confuses maximum exposure with intelligence. Ask whether your reserve is actually too large or whether your standards have finally started to exceed the system's appetite for your obedience. Ask whether your money is arranged for a calm world that rarely exists or for the real world where life, markets, fear, and opportunity collide at inconvenient times. Then make the harder decision, not the decision that looks smartest this quarter. The decision that makes you hardest to corner. That is the real purpose of cash, not comfort, command. And when the next sale begins and the next line forms at the exit, you will learn whether your money was earning applause or whether it was building power. One of those feels good in easy years. The other changes your life in the years that matter.